On today's Hot Zone, we're going to talk about law enforcement under attack. Not from criminals flooding across the border anymore, but from the politicians trying to stop them from returning those criminals back south to where they came from. Sanctuary cities are absolutely panicking as ICE raids ramp up, and local leaders are declaring state of emergency in Los Angeles to try to stop the very agents that are enforcing federal law for Americans. We're going to talk about the costs to Americans, to people in Chicago and Los Angeles, of these politicians' opposition to legal ICE raids that are happening all around the country. And we're going to talk about how the people that are sworn to protect America are being turned into villains. Now, we're going to talk about a state of emergency that the Los Angeles government has declared because of federal law enforcement activities happening in their cities. Now, this is a little out of the ordinary. Typically, you would want federal law enforcement to be enforcing the law. You would not want to pass an ordinance to try to limit the federal government from doing their job. And if you don't like the way the federal government is doing its job, then the best thing you could do would be to get Congress to change the law and not just expect the federal government to ignore the law. But see, that's what these politicians have gotten used to over the last 4 years under Joe Biden. They just ignored the laws that they didn't like, and the Biden administration didn't bother to enforce any of them. So in California, Gavin Newsom, they've passed a law called SB 627, which is called the No Secret Police Act, and that bans most law enforcement, including federal agents that are operating in California, from wearing face masks or concealing their identities during their operations. Los Angeles County has voted to draft an ordinance that bans law enforcement from wearing masks while on duty, and local California bills require officers to show their face and visible identification. But that'd be easy to get around. All President Trump has to do is just say all federal agents must wear a gas mask while on duty in case they have to use tear gas or something like that. And that would get around this law. Now, I want to show you some of these videos of what we're seeing in Chicago, especially this one, which is part of an ABC news report about a incident that happened in Chicago, and it got really out of hand. So check this out.
Agents crashing into the SUV, they say, to try to stop it. Two people then fleeing on foot, both eventually arrested. A crowd at the scene growing hostile, throwing eggs and rocks. Agents firing tear gas.
Did you see that?
Still throwing eggs and rocks.
That guy got
Agents
hit right in the head with
tear gas. That confrontation highlighting increased tensions. Homeland.
This is what agents are having to face. They performed a pit maneuver on a fleeing felon, illegal alien, who had already hit a Border Patrol vehicle, was obviously a danger to the community, driving at very high rates of speed through a residential area. And so they performed pit maneuver, which is to hit the vehicle just in the back wheel and spin it around. It was textbook. It worked perfectly, sent the offending vehicle into a tailspin, and then they had to jump out and run for it. They were eventually captured. This is what you want to see law enforcement doing, taking bad people off the streets. Imagine if you lived in that neighborhood and your kid's out riding his bike and this guy's driving by at 100 miles an hour. Some people would say, what, if the law enforcement didn't chase him, then he wouldn't have to run away at 100 miles an hour. If law enforcement didn't bother to enforce the laws, then our cities would be overrun by criminals. This is what law enforcement is supposed to do. And these sanctuary cities are absolutely losing their minds over this. They can't take this. I went back because if you remember during the Biden administration, when the borders were wide open and allowed anybody in, and there were tens of thousands of people coming across the border every month, basically about a city's worth every single month, like a good sized city, a couple 100,000 people every month coming across the border. And of course, the border is Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Many of them were coming into Texas. That's a big burden on the state. So Texas was doing what it had to do and was saying, all right, these cities up in the north, these quote unquote sanctuary cities, New York, Chicago, Martha's Vineyard, or they're all calling themselves sanctuary cities. If that's the case, then let's call them on this and tell them, all right, we're going to bus these migrants up to your cities. So when they did that, these cities were not very happy. It was insane to hear these cities all of a sudden start complaining about the migrants that were coming into their cities when they had already been welcoming the cities in. Like, I was in Latin America during that time, reporting on the caravans that were coming up through Guatemala into Mexico and walking up to the United States. And I pointed this out at the time. There were literal infomercials playing on television down there, put out by CNN. And the name of the infomercial was Migrants. Here is a list of cities in America that will welcome you with open arms. And it listed sanctuary cities across America. And then it went on to say, the best way to get to these cities is by going here and doing this and taking, et cetera, essentially informing them on television, this is CNN in Spanish, on how to get to the U.S. illegally, how to make it across the border safely, and what cities you should go to not get in trouble. And when Chicago started receiving busloads of migrants from Texas, all of a sudden they were really upset about that. And now the mayor of Chicago is saying, we don't have a problem here. There's no problem here. We love all our migrants. They're fine. I did a little digging and I found out that Chicago currently spends around $600 to $650 million a year to house and care for illegal migrants. That's based on city and state data updated through October of this month, October 2025. Imagine being a taxpayer in Chicago and realizing that you have to pay for all of these illegals who are here staying in shelters to the tune of $1.4 million a day. This is insane, absolutely nuts. Now, people that are here illegally do not obviously want to leave. They came here because they wanted the American dream. I went to cities in Guatemala during the Biden administration that were all but ghost towns, because everyone in those towns in northern Guatemala had left to go work in the United States. The only people that were in those towns were people who had been deported from the U.S. and were just waiting for their chance to go back in, or the wives and children of men who had gone north and left their families behind. Every time that you arrest a criminal for any reason, a murderer, a rapist, a DUI, whatever, you put him in jail, you're taking that person away from his family. That's just sort of comes with the territory. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So it's not out of the ordinary, it's not strange, it's not even cruel, really, to remove somebody from their family if they are a felon and they're a danger to society. They're likely a danger to their own family as well. So that's not family separation. Family separation is throwing open the floodgates in the United States and, oh, by the way, making it easier for you to get in if you happen to have a kid with you, or if you're a single mother or a pregnant lady or something like that, because that just encourages more people to bring one of their kids, leave the rest of their kids behind, leave the wife behind, and come up to the United States. We saw that happen over and over again. Here's what happens. The guy goes to the United States, he crosses into the U.S., he gets a job, and he's waiting on his asylum. They know what to say when they get to the U.S. They get coached on that by international organizations like the IOM, International Organization for Migration. They say just the right things, and they get a court date for an actual asylum hearing. Because there were millions of people in line for asylum hearings, and at the time there were only about 400 asylum judges to hear those cases, their court date was likely 3-4 years in the future. The problem that presented is that if they leave the United States in that time before their hearing, then they don't get to have the hearing for asylum. They can't come back. If they come back in, they have to get a new appointment date. And so they're not allowed to leave and go visit their families. They didn't see their families for years. If you're a military-age male and you come to the U.S. and you're lonely, away from your family, you got nothing to do for years, You can imagine what eventually happens is that these guys end up with a girlfriend, and their girlfriend gets pregnant. Now they've got another family in the United States, and they have more immediate needs because they're here in the U.S. with you. For the first year, we got money every month from my husband. He went up to the U.S., but we haven't heard from him now in 6-8 months, and he stopped sending money. We don't know what happened to him. Typically what happened to him is that he got another family, and he's just stopped supporting his family down south. That is the true family separation. So it's not loving, it's not compassionate to throw the doors open and allow people to come in illegally. I think that people should be able to migrate if they want to. People should be able to live where they want to live, but there should be a legal pathway for them to do that. The bottom line is, I sought a legal remedy for the things that I was fleeing in the U.S. And there should be a legal way for people to emigrate to the United States. And indeed there is, but it's not very easy. It's not very friendly. And it's, of course, has to be pretty choosy, because if not, everybody in the world would want to move to the United States and they would just collapse the system. So the bottom line is, these sanctuary cities are hundreds of millions of dollars a year of your tax dollars to pay for illegal immigrants, for programs for illegal immigrants. Now, Los Angeles has declared a state of emergency, and what that allows them to do is not call up the National Guard to fight the ICE agents or anything like that. What that allows them to do is it frees up funds in the budget for them to give to people that they feel are being affected by these raids. Who are those people? They're illegal migrants. So what Los Angeles just did by declaring a state of emergency is allocate more taxpayer dollars to give to illegal migrants in their state to try to keep them there. And you might say, why in the world would any state or country want to throw open doors and allow millions of illegal migrants into their country? I think there's two main reasons why the Democrats want more people in their cities. Number one is the apportionment issue. Every 10 years when we take a census in America, they don't count the number of citizens, they count the number of bodies, just the number of souls that are present in your state. And they allocate the 435 members of the U.S. Congress based on the number of people, not the number of citizens. So it's a way that they can pick up more Democratic votes. It's an underhanded way. People say that illegal immigrants can't vote in elections in America, and that's true. Legally, they cannot vote. Sometimes they vote illegally. We've seen cases where that's happened, but not enough to really change the outcome of anything. But the apportionment issue is a way that they can just vote by their presence and by being in those cities. This is why President Trump has been pushing for the census to be changed to count citizens and not just bodies. That's what they really ought to do. I want to show you this interview with a ICE agent as he's only about 100 yards from Gavin Newsom. Check this out.
What happened? We're here making Los Angeles a safer place. Since we won't have politicians that'll do that, we do that ourselves. So that's what we're here today. As you can see, already making it a safer place. We're glad to be here, not going anywhere.
And the governor's inside right there.
I don't know where he's at.
He's about 100 feet behind us. Do you have any comment from him or anything?
Again,
any message?
We're making Los Angeles and California a safer place. We're going to continue to do that, and they can take that one to the bank and cash it.
In Chicago, they've actually had these liberal pastors who are going and are confronting ICE. I got this video here of these liberal pro-gay lesbian pastors and stuff that are going and they're trying to get into the ICE facility, saying that we want to go in and bless the people inside and that sort of thing. They're not being allowed in. There are local delegates who are trying to get in. They're not being allowed in. This is going to continue to ramp up, folks, because the left is preparing let's add this one to the stage. This is ICE as they are arresting, this is in Los Angeles, arresting more and more people. This is going to continue because, number one, ICE is not going to slow down. And number two, the left is preparing more organized riots and protests. The next one is coming up on the 18th. So in about 3 days, They're having the next No Kings protest. No Kings is a very well-funded NGO, and they're paying for protests in hundreds of cities all across the country. And you can bet there's going to be a lot more unrest and violence. And this is what the left wants. I told you at the beginning, I wrote about this in Death of Civilization. The left wants more chaos during the Trump administration. They want to ramp up the chaos so that you'll get tired of it and you'll go, you know what, I can't handle voting for another Republican. I'm going to vote for a safe Democrat next time because I'm just tired of all this chaos. I promise you, it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. And so we need to be prepared for it.